Hi, and welcome to Career Mobility with James McIlvena in May 2026. Hi, James, how are you?
Doing really well. Thanks for asking.
Fantastic. Now, I have got some fun things for us to speak about today. The last couple of months, we've had some really interesting discussions, and certainly those discussions have centered around, you know, uh, essentially moving from, where we've talked about understanding the market. We started to understand sort of, how people could be more strategic in market. But this month, James, I want to focus more on how to turn those strategic opportunities into momentum. So I would love to get your opinion on a fair few things. So I've got lots and lots of great questions for you. So where I want to start is we know that even if you have a strategy, sometimes it doesn't always convert immediately and it doesn't always convert how we think it will. So the first question I have for you, because I just really want to, I know, from the conversations I have, a lot of people get very frustrated. They might have networking conversations and they feel like they're not going anywhere. So why do capable strategic people, do you think, still struggle to see immediate results in career transition?
I'll start by saying immediate results is an unrealistic
Yeah,
expectation. I mean, it's nice if it occurs, but we actually often see that even with people declining or delaying the start of really getting active in programs, she'll be
yeah,
right. Don't worry about it. I've already got a couple of discussions bubbling away. No support needed. And then those don't eventuate into a job offer as expected, and then we get the whoa, now I'm a bit behind, and how do I play catch up? So the easiest answer I can give you on this one is be more accepting of the fact that like the immediate solution a might not occur. And even if an immediate solution does come along, I would encourage people to be a little bit cautious about the immediate solution, because the
yeah.
immediate solution, there's a lot of buyer's regret from the people I speak to when they take the so it's the first thing that comes along. There's some buyer's regret. It seems
Yeah.
easy, but easy isn't always right.
Absolutely. And, even though it may feel like it's a slower process at the moment in the market, it's really worthwhile getting what you want as opposed to just what there is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we'll talk about that. So,
And and
so in
and,
that
and
case,
I'm not
yeah,
and I'm not, just to clarify my response there, I'm not saying don't take the first one, just assess it. Like just don't
yeah,
take it because it's the easy option. Sometimes the first option might be amazing, fantastic, great,
yeah, happy days.
sorted. Um, just make sure I've done proper assessment and like had a couple of discussions and at least referenced it with your coach and use some of the amazing tools that now exist to make sure that the alignment's going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that case, what do you think is the difference then between just being active and being effective in the career transition process?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Einstein's theory of insanity, right? Yeah. The difference between active and effective is active
Yeah,
could be the same action taken again and again without any real result. Effective is being able to track forward progression. And so
yeah,
that would be the yardstick I would use for this particular one. If you feel like you're working hard but not getting anything done, then you need to change the way you're working. And it's no different with how people are in transition. So people are not feeling, I mean, everyone who's listening to this, take some reflection time and say, what is my, was to map it on an XY graph, what is my progression versus my activity? And if you don't like the answer, then have a reflection on the actions you're taking and see what you need to change or amend.
yeah, absolutely. I think bouncing those ideas around with the coach, with your AI, just looking at other ways is really important. I guess the other thing is obviously people often do want to see, a quick outcome pace in what they're doing. So what expectations do people often have, do you think, about how quickly things should land?
It's it's different for a range of reasons and it depends on the individual. So one of the
Mm,
drivers, just pulling it out, is financial for a lot of people. There
yeah,
is a clock ticking for most people, for most people's families. They do the sums very quickly. They give themselves, almost every person who enters transition gives themselves sort of an expected window.
Yeah.
The ability to land quickly ahead of that window, they see as like a net benefit. Great. There's maybe a lump sum from the payout to put towards the mortgage or put myself into savings or a better financial position. But then there's another element to it, and the other element to it is the ability to sort of get back and get active and feel like there's that sense of purpose. Like people don't like or enjoy being in the process of transition for long periods of time, and
Yeah.
so there's always going to be a magnet to limit that time as much as possible. The call out, and I've said this before and I can't say it enough, is just make sure that you recognize transition, however uncomfortable it is, as a great opportunity for growth. And we all know that growth mindset comes from being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
that would be my number one take out here is actually don't overlook what is a unique opportunity for growth for the sake of ease.
Absolutely. There's a question that I'm going to ask you a little bit later on in this conversation, and I think it just really rounds that out. So I love that you've brought that up. So I think one of the things in terms of turning strategy into success is really about, in this particular market, how do you communicate value? And I have this conversation all the time with people about how do they articulate about their skill set, their background, what makes them unique, those sorts of things, and how does that story, the story of them and who they are as a professional land in the workplace, so, or in the career transition process. So where do you see that clients essentially undersell themselves or over explain themselves?
Probably take a step back and then answer the question more directly. The step back would
Yeah.
be, what is the definition of value to the individual in the first place before we even talk about overselling and underselling? And so at its very core, actually understanding value means that you actually understand the needs of the person you're talking to or the
Yeah.
opportunity that might be created. Thinking of value as like, this is me, this is what I can do, here's my skills, could be a misalignment to what they need. And so therefore you think you're selling value, but you're not selling value. You're actually telling them a whole bunch of stuff that they go, well, that's very lovely for you, but that's not what we need.
Yeah.
So the overselling or underselling can be easily linked back to, have you truly understood what value means to the listener before you start doing anything, before you start articulating it? And it's actually
Yeah.
alignment versus the over and under, which is the biggest question to answer. And that
Ooh, I
starts
love that.
by
Mm.
questions of, ahead of, because a lot of interviews still to this day, it's like, I'm going to pepper you with questions and then I'm going to have you ask me questions at the end. And I actually often, when I interview, I reverse that. I actually ask the questions up front and then I get into the questions, because sometimes the one question they ask and the context they get is, oh, now I understand what you were looking for. Oh, if I could, I'd rewind and change a lot of my answers because now I understand what you're after. So my call out is, don't rely on the fact people will give you the chance to ask questions at the start of a discussion. Do
Yeah.
everything you can to find out what value means to them ahead of it. So if you're working through a recruiter, push them really hard on making sure that they do the work they're supposed to do and they actually give you like a great preview of what they're looking for. Use your networks. Figure out how you can actually understand either what's going on in the industry, even better, that company, even better, in the area of the person that you'll be interviewing with, or reach out to that individual through LinkedIn and say, hey, we've got an interview coming up next week. here are a couple of questions I want to ask. Context is really important to me. Even just the proactivity of doing something like that would be incredibly impressive. So alignment is my answer here, not the over and under.
I love it. I love alignment. I think, I mean, to me, it sounds like sales 101 sort of skills. So I'm going to ask you, James, what do you think then a compelling career story sounds like in today's market?
It's the what and the why. So a lot of people will tell you what they have done. I did this, and then I did that, and then I did that, and then I did that, and then I did this course, and then I was able to do that. But the why is really important, and the why is what a lot of people look for, because then they understand the journey, they understand the importance, they actually understand in a lot of instances the agility people have shown throughout their journey. And those things are incredibly important. Every person is more than the sum of what's shown on a piece of paper or a LinkedIn profile or and bringing that to life is absolutely critical.
So in that case, how do you help someone clearly articulate their value without them sounding rehearsed or just simply generic?
Yeah. So let's assume the alignment of value is done, because we've already covered that. How does someone bring it to life? I mean, it's the difference people have made. And so people often tell you when it's documenting, the roles you've done, but actually talking about the impact it's made and why it was important to you and the enjoyment you got out of it and the connection to your values or the sense of purpose it gave you, is incredibly compelling when articulated, but often overlooked. I mean, it's the people almost fear that sharing the human side or the emotional side of what we do and the impact it makes is not necessary in an interview. I'd argue exactly the contrary. I'd argue that is an amazing way to stand out from the crowd, because anyone can recite what they've done. Very few people can actually link that to sense of purpose, emotion, and alignment to their values. And if they can do that as a potential employer, it's like, well, this is likely to be a more considered, more passionate, more engaged person if I have them come and work with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the next question for me is, like, if we're sort of helping people to stand out without just sort of trying to be different, sort of, be or do not, there is no try. How do we reduce that performative pressure on people? So what do you think genuinely differentiates candidates right now, especially when experience is similar between various candidates?
Before I answer this, I have to acknowledge the Star Wars reference with the recent May 4th in there. So well done. Do or do not. There is no try.
Be with you.
So to answer your question, look, I think that differentiation it's got to be a personal journey. I mean, I don't think I can sum it up in just one, hey, this is something that's going to be applicable for everyone. It is probably a reflection activity at an individual level more than anything else. And it incorporates a couple of the themes we've just talked about. What is needed, what is important to me, what have I done and how have I shown the ability to acquire new skills and be agile? And then finally, why does this resonate with me as an individual, and show the personal side of the person. If you can get those things aligned, that's an in-depth discussion that people will remember. That will stand out.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned sales earlier, and I know not everyone's comfortable with that, even as a concept, much less as an actual, practical thing. But how can clients signal confidence and readiness for a role in an interview or just in the process without overselling? Because I think some people worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and this, so there's sales and there's soft sales. So if it feels forced, and by that I mean, yeah, everyone has been in a scenario, whatever it is, where you know when you're being hard sold,
Yeah.
and you know when it actually feels more like a discussion of, here is something you need, this is the solution. It's the classic sell me this
Mm.
pen scenario, right? Um, like hard sales, if it's feeling like it's hard sales, then I would suggest you've just answered your own question by the fact, oh gosh, it feels like I'm
True.
selling, right? If it feels like a discussion that is soft selling, i.e., I'm not backwards in coming forwards in letting you know that there's alignment there. I'm not backwards in coming forwards in letting you know that I'm actually genuinely interested in the purpose and the impact that this role can have and how well I fit into that role. But it shouldn't feel hard. It should feel like a discussion around two people reaching an alignment, almost a psychological contract, if you will, about what needs to get done and why you're the right solution for that.
Yeah.
It's the best probably way I can express, soft sales in this type of scenario, that it feels like an alignment discussion. It doesn't feel like I need to sell
Push.
myself. If that's
Yeah.
the
No.
feeling you're getting at the end of the discussion, you're probably on the right track. If it feels like you've actually been pushing in certain areas, then that's an amazing point for reflection or for debrief with your
Mm.
coach to say, hey, I felt like this bit was going great, but then I felt we got to this bit and I really felt like it was forcing it a bit.
Yeah.
Ask for suggestions around how you take that sort of softer alignment driven approach.
Yeah, and could be, I mean, it could be literally that kind of, visceral red flag, like you feeling something doesn't feel right, and that's the experience. So we want to make sure that when people are involved in this process, that they're actually turning turning conversations into opportunities. We want those, to go somewhere. So make that networking both visible and feel purposeful. So what do you think, James, separates conversations that sort of go nowhere from those that create momentum?
Follow up. It would be, I mean, yeah, yeah, like, and maybe if there is no follow up, then you treat the conversation for exactly what it was, which was information gathering.
Yeah,
So there might be different purpose and different outcomes that are generated from those discussions. But your question was specific to the what demarcates one that was like, hey, that was nice. Maybe I acquired some additional information, through to one that is likely to realistically generate into an opportunity. And that's follow up. And that follow
yeah,
up isn't like, hey, remember to send me directly to, refer me directly to a job. To direct follow up can come in a range of different
yeah,
next steps. It could be a further onward introduction. It could be, follow up around sharing of information. It could just be the commitment to check in again in 2 weeks. It could be whatever it might be, but follow up is the number one differentiator between momentum and discussions that go nowhere. And people must feel, it almost needs to flip. You don't feel like actually holding the initial discussion has already been enough of a favor to you. And then following up is asking for too much. You know, people who are going to take the discussion are doing it for a reason. Most people
yeah,
genuinely have self-interest above all else. And you need to approach the discussion by saying, I actually bring to the table some insight, some information, some perspective that that person doesn't have. So it was a two-way discussion. So therefore, in any way feeling bad about following up, particularly if someone's made a commitment to do so and then they've dropped the ball, It's probably because, like everyone this day and age, either they get busy, low attention span, but it's
Mm.
not an intent thing. So, and by follow up, I don't mean once. I don't mean, I mean actually following up, almost tracking it like you would track a job application. Say, I'm going to see this through until the answer is like, that's reached its natural end. And
Yeah,
I'm going to pick up
absolutely. I mean,
another.
yeah, it's like proof of concept of who you will be in that role as a professional. I think it's like a reflection of how you do business essentially. It's a really interesting one about follow up though, and again, this is a conversation that is had very very often. I have it often myself, and I think often people do feel awkward or pushy if they do follow up. But you and I definitely are aligned in that people get busy, and if you've invested the time in the first meeting and you've said you'll do something, it's not because you don't want to. If you haven't done it, it's that you want to follow up on that. So and you need someone just to remind you. How do you think clients should think about follow up though? How can they change that for themselves from feeling awkward or pushy?
So I think part of it is that dynamic I discussed earlier. If
Mm,
the follow up is just an ask, a one-sided ask,
mm,
versus a let's continue what was a interesting initial discussion. There is often benefits to the individual you're following up that you might not either see or be aware of.
mm,
And I'll give you some examples. So, for the want of someone who's very pressed for time, they actually really wanted to, you follow up, the timing is right, you felt like you're chasing them, you know, you reach out to them at just the right time, there's an opportunity, bang, they submit you to the opportunity, you
mm.
get placed, they get a referral bonus. They get kudos from actually introducing someone for a hard to fill role. You've actually
Yeah.
done them a favor by taking that one extra step of follow up. So I think it's almost the imbalance of who's benefiting from the follow up
Mm,
that inhibits people in a lot of instances. And in most instances, just reflect on that. Actually, I'm either going to offer something to put a hook out there to help the follow up occur, or at least rebalancing and saying, actually, the individual's got as much to gain out of this as I do, so should not feel hesitant or guilty in following up. Do use a general rule though of what is the right consistency or what is the right time frame for follow up. The other thing I hear when I speak to people is most people leave it too long. It's like, um, there is twice in a single day, too much. Every day, too much. But actually, if someone's committed to do something and they've given you a date and haven't done it by that date, actually the next day, totally fine and should be expected. So
mm,
think about the consistency. I'm not suggesting people like hound people on a daily basis, but I am absolutely suggesting like keep it tracked, log it, keep a stream, go, calendar invites, whatever works for you. Track it through, have like reminders put into the calendar to say this is going to be the day. It's only going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to do my follow-ups this morning before I do anything else.
yeah, brilliant. I totally agree, and I think the day after, like you say, if someone says they're going to do something by a certain date, then let that happen. But if it doesn't happen, then follow up. Brilliant. So we know,
There's a lot.
yeah,
There's a lot of those said that'd be by Thursday. I probably shouldn't contact them on the Friday. Maybe mid next week. I'm like mid next week might be too late.
yeah, get on
So if they've
there,
said
get into
Thursday,
it.
I'm normally
Yeah,
following up on the Friday morning.
absolutely.
And it's a check-in. It's a polite inquiry. Would be my other
Yeah.
thing.
I think it also shows how important that follow up is to the individual. As I say, if it were a business outcome they were following up, you would hope that they would be doing that on the Friday, if that's the agreement for the Thursday. So 100%. So, interviewing in uncertain markets. I want to just talk about this because we know we're in a very uncertain market, certainly at the moment. We have been for quite some time, so, and for multiple reasons. How do you think candidates should approach interviews when roles and organisations do feel less certain at the moment?
Two things. One, if it's uncertainty about the organisation and the context,
Mm,
seek to understand, not to assume. So this is where not stepping over the line of questioning them. Like no one would want to come across in an interview as like, oh, so how much longer are you guys going to be around? Because I've heard there's trouble in this sector, right? No, um, but the ability to actually ask some clarifying questions. Yes, absolutely. They're smart questions. They open up a conversation that is very relevant and something that the individual you're talking to is in there living it day in, day out. People generally
yeah,
like to talk about, and they're more than happy to give context when it comes to these type of things. Because you're right, it's an uncertain environment for a range of different reasons, and people want like a sense of coming through a transition. The last thing they want is to feel like they're walking into another opportunity that's going to be equally unstable and unsure. So seek to understand.
yeah, beautiful. What matters more, do you think, in interviews at the moment than having the perfect background?
Ability to adapt, learn, be flexible, demonstrate human skills over learned skills, so the
Mm,
softer skills.
yeah.
That's the list. Yeah, those things go. And don't get me wrong in saying that the capability of those hard skills to do the role are important, but they're the differentiators.
Yeah, absolutely. My next question, I think again you may have answered this, is when it comes to decision makers these days, what do they listen for? Do you think beyond skills and experience? Sounds to me like that list you just gave.
That and impact. So I did
Yeah.
mention
Okay.
in
Yeah.
an earlier response, it's
Mm,
what's the impact you've made? Like how did you change either the outcome? How did you
yeah.
change the people around you for the better? How did you achieve something? And this is different to what is traditionally included on a CV, like these are my achievements.
Yeah.
It goes a little further than that. It starts with those type of things. It starts with I worked on exchange project because of it was an organizational directive. This was the output. This was like the savings, but it's the were you a change champion? Were you the person who brought others along for the ride? Are you generally an early adopter of these type of things in your personal life? And that's the kind of thing that made you uniquely able, more able than others, to actually help support change when it came along. It's those type of things people uniquely listen for.
Brilliant. So, in closing out, I want to talk a little bit about sort of, in this market, trust, timing, and perspective are really, really important. What do you wish, James, if there were one thing that our clients understood about timing and trust in this phase of transition, what would it be?
So timing, even if it's a slower start, get started early, for sure. That example I gave before of she'll be right, time is burnt, and then it becomes more urgent. I it happens a lot, and so there absolutely is validity in making sure that there's processing of the decision, what's just occurred. I'm not suggesting it's like, hey, forget about all that stuff, get straight into work on your marketing plan. But I am suggesting there's very few people who don't when I talk to them later in their journey, don't regret having not started, not having done something, even if it's planning. And if the planning is like, I want to take some time out, make sure it's a considered decision, not a reactive decision just to get it done. So that would be the first one on timing. On trust, I mean,
Yeah.
it's you almost need to, now more than ever, trust that people have your best interests at heart, and you're never going to know everything that is going on in the background. And it gets back to what you're talking about before, and it's a uniquely, I think I've never seen an environment, at least not in the last 10 years, that has been sort of as complex when it comes to the dynamics of how roles are created, how roles are decided, extended, lengthy selection processes, and that can actually erode people's trust around roles that were there and have disappeared, or things that were discussed and are then not there anymore. But you almost need to accept that that is just part of the market dynamics at the moment. And if those things happen, don't let that knock the trust you have in people who have your best interests at heart. And whether that's recruiters, don't write them off because a role that you're interested in disappeared or got cancelled, right? Think about where that decision might have originated and where it came from, because you're going to
Yeah.
need to put your trust in people, be they in your networks or be they people are working on your behalf, um,
Mhm.
and keep trust with those people. If people are not deserving of your trust, absolutely make a smart decision. But where they are, you're going to need to trust people because they are going to help you get where you need to be. Doing it
Yeah.
all yourself is very rarely, if ever, the right answer as to how people get the outcome.
Yeah. I've always said, James, we've talked about it before, but everybody lands. It's just a case of timing, and opportunity, and being active and doing all those things that you've just mentioned. So yeah, it's just trusting that there is a journey. Sometimes very, very large roller coaster, depending on where you're at. But yeah. So what would you say then is the one thing that people listening can actually focus on literally this week that would actually increase their chances of converting conversations into real opportunities?
Yeah, I would think I'm going to do a mini audit of where you're at. So um, action, outcome, would be a starting point. What's worked, what hasn't worked, what are all the things that are available to me? So, what are all the tools that are available to me? Which ones
Yeah.
have I used? Which ones have I not used yet?
Mm,
Um, it's a really good way to take a decisive action around knowing. And it's not to say you have to do all of those things, but it just means it's a considered decision around why you are or are not doing something. And if you
mm,
are doing something, how effective is it? That would be my number. Like, doing that quick audit will actually allow people, it's a really good exercise for a change of perspective. And in fact, that habit that is built of being able to do it once, that should be re-engaged whenever people are feeling a bit stuck, or a bit
mm,
dismayed as to it's just not moving the way I thought it would move, or I'm feeling a bit lost.
mm.
It's a great thing. It's almost like a recentering
Yeah.
exercise for individuals.
I like that. I mean, I talk about the wheel, of course, and it's like I was, if people are deflated, like how do you get some more air into that tire? And I love that idea of the mini audit, because the reality is there are so many resources, people-led, tech-enabled, across everything we do, that provide opportunity to sort of really, yeah, connect into whatever resource or individual that you need to have those conversations. That sounds brilliant. So my last question for you for this one, James, is when people do eventually land, because we know they do, um,
Yeah.
what do you think they realise about this stage in the process in hindsight? What do you think they think back and go, if only I'd known?
I think they feel it's like a unique opportunity and something that is very different from, unless they've been through the transition process before, but something that's very different from how they've moved between roles and opportunities in the past. You know, it is unique. When do you ever get the opportunity to use our career canvas tool, for example? So it's speaking to what we're just talking about, you know, all of those various tools when you're doing the audit, like thinking about, have I used this? If I haven't used it, why not? When else do you get a chance to like look at career inspirations and actually really think outside the box as to the type of things you could do, whether that's rule it in or rule it out? You know, when do you ever in your career, like you might have some great mentors, you might have some great sponsors throughout a career, but when else do you ever get a chance to actually talk to a dedicated coach who's an expert in the field when it comes to actually supporting you through this type of process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it
Really?
used to be, only athletes and sort of, senior executives had coaches, but now, having access to that is so beneficial.
So yeah, so to put a fine point on it, I would say that the one thing that people, when they land, like I said, they all do, would reflect on would be actually that was reasonably unique. And the reflection is either I took full advantage of it or I did not. And this is why we actually often find some of the best advocates when they work in our job search work teams are people who have actually been through the transition process more than once because they've learnt that lesson, and they encourage people who are going through it for the first time to say, hey, this is what I've this is what I've learned. You use what's available to you, or otherwise you'll feel like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, the benefit of hindsight is fantastic. So just wrap it up. So, when it comes from sort of strategy to success and turning momentum into opportunities, essentially the takeaway is career transition doesn't really reward urgency, because at the end of the day, you can't make things happen. You can definitely take action, but it does reward clarity 100%. It rewards consistency and also connection. So look, it's always great to have these discussions with you, James. I can't wait to see what we talk about in June. But for now, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day and look forward to speaking soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, TJ.
Cheers, James.